Hello class, and welcome to week 4 of Old Testament Survey. Thank you for your hard work this past week and all the dedication you put into the completion of the several assignments that we had. I know this past week has been demanding on your time, but great job completing the assignments in a timely fashion. Well, we are officially at the halfway point as we enter into week number 4. This week you will have reading from the Hill and Walton textbook in chapters 16 through 18, as well as some additional scripture reading for your reading report. We will be finishing up part 3 of the Hill-Walton textbook on the historical books. And if you remember from last week, we were introduced to the JEDP theory, otherwise called the documentary hypothesis. And one of the defining characteristics that scholars attribute to this hypothesis is that the historical books of Joshua through about 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles are sometimes also called the Deuteronomistic history. Now, scholars believe that these books were written over many years and finally compiled by a single redactor or editor. But this week we are finishing the section of the Old Testament attributed to the genre of history specifically, or the historical books, which span from about Joshua to Esther. In chapter 16 of our textbook, we are introduced to the books of 1st and 2nd Chronicles, which in many ways seem like a simple retelling of the earlier books of 1st and 2nd Kings. But the books of 1st and 2nd Chronicles have a unique purpose for being written, with a significant backdrop of history and meaning behind their composition. The historical background for the creation of the books of 1st and 2nd Chronicles, according to the majority of Old Testament scholars, is the post-exilic period in Hebrew history. Now, the dating for the books of Chronicles is most likely between 500 and 300 BC. And the history that is covered in the books of Chronicles addresses the time of the united monarchy under the reign of King Saul, all the way up to the Babylonian captivity, spanning a total of about 500 years of history. Now, the Hill and Walton textbook proposes a couple of very good insights into why the author of 1st and 2nd Chronicles wrote those books, when often they seem like almost identical in material that is discussed in the books of 1st and 2nd Kings. But I would say that the purpose of the books of 1st and 2nd Chronicles is to remind the reader of the good old days of Israel. During the reign of King David and King Solomon, in essence, those kings represented the best of Israel and devotion to Yahweh. During the time of David especially, although not so much with his son Solomon, who we know was led astray by his foreign wives, there was a lull in paganism and Baal worship as well, which the Israelites, or the faithful Israelites, longed for again. And perhaps the chronicler's final purpose in his writing was to offer hope to post-exilic Israel, that Yahweh had been active during the time of King David and King Solomon, but that he had still been active ever since, and he continues to remain active today. This is a great message not only for the Israelites of post-exilic Jerusalem, but also for modern-day believers as well. Now, chapter 17 in the Hill-Walton textbook introduces the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. And if you notice, occasionally the book names are written together with a hyphen in the middle. And that is because most Old Testament scholars, and I would agree with them, believe that Ezra and Nehemiah were originally one book, until later editors and scribes separated the books into two halves. Now, the theological purpose of the books of Ezra and Nehemiah is an emphasis on the covenant renewal of the people of Israel with Yahweh. Ezra and Nehemiah call the people to spiritual renewal and to a renewal of social justice and morality in the community in accordance with the Scriptures and God's law. Now, chapter 18, which is the last chapter for this week, introduces the book of Esther, which is the last and final historical book of the Old Testament in terms of the historical genre. Now, many of you know that the book of Esther does not mention the name of God, and seemingly doesn't refer to Yahweh at all. Now, this has troubled many scholars, but the message of Esther is one of hope and faith, and although God's name is not mentioned, it is clear that Esther and her uncle Mordecai are faithful to their God, Yahweh. Perhaps some of the most important themes and messages of this book are that God is at work behind the scenes in the most difficult situations, and God's ultimate plan for his people cannot be disrupted by wicked men. So, as we enter into week 4, which means we're at the halfway point, I encourage you to look back on the work that you have done, and quite frankly, be proud of yourselves, and look ahead of the work, towards the work that you still have yet to do. This week is lighter than other weeks, so enjoy the lighter workload and make sure that you thoroughly study for your quiz. Again, they are timed, and there are no notes and books allowed. Good luck, and God bless. Shalom.